Hello everyone, so today is going to be another try a volume video. This time I have 10 volume 1s to talk about with you. I've been working on this video for a while, but just new volume 1s kept coming out, so I kept delaying it to read those volume 1s and then include them in this video. And right now there are still volume 1s that I've just received that I was going to put in this video, but this video has been delayed long enough, so I'm going to go ahead and talk about the 10 volumes that I've read recently. The first volume I read for this try a volume video was the Darwin Incident Volume 1. This is about a boy who is half chimp, half human. This is a result of animal experimentation, and 15 years later he is going to high school for the first time. There's also a group of vegan terrorists in this manga, and they are basically committing attacks in the name of animal welfare, but really it's just to punish humanity basically for terrorizing animals. So this first volume was enjoyable enough. It was action-packed. The characters were interesting so far. At least this main character here is interesting. I did think the whole vegan terrorism thing was a little bit heavy-handed, but I'm willing to look past that because there were enough hints and intrigue that I'm interested in continuing. There is just something about this first volume that I didn't love, and I really can't pinpoint why, but it was enjoyable and it looks like it's going to be a pretty good sci-fi thriller, so I'm interested in continuing and seeing more about this character here and what direction he's going to go, because he's very interesting so far. The next volume I read was Touge Oni Volume 1. This is a fantasy adventure manga about a girl who is basically about to be sacrificed by her village, but she's saved by a priest and she basically decides to follow him around looking for different gods and interacting with them. Unfortunately, in this case, I did not love this volume. In fact, I didn't even really like it. There are some interesting monsters, like the moth lady on the back that I talked about, but other than that, there was really nothing keeping me reading this volume. I almost stopped reading it halfway through. Now, don't hate me for this comparison, but it kind of reminded me of the tone of Frieren. Not quite as sad as that one, but it is a slow-paced adventure fantasy manga, and that one was not my favorite either. That's a very unpopular opinion, but I don't really care for Frieren. Nothing against it, I just wasn't really captivated by it. And this one really reminds me of that, but the characters are not as good. The setting is not as interesting. The tone is not as well done. So I wrote in my notes that I might give this one more volume to see if it hooks me, but at this point I've decided I'm not reading anymore. I'm not interested. This one was not for me, unfortunately. The next first volume I read was Glitch Volume 1. This is about two siblings who move to a new town, but this town is experiencing weird glitches in reality. So they team up with some new friends, some of which are more human than others, to investigate what's going on. So I don't really have a lot to say about this first volume. It was interesting enough. I like the setup of the mystery. It's intriguing enough for me to keep reading. I do also really like the art, and there were some unsettling moments, which I obviously appreciate. What was really weird, and I'm not sure if this is the case for other people, but my volume was wrapped in plastic for some reason. I have no idea why. There is nothing in here that seems to suggest that it would need to be wrapped in plastic or kept people from reading it on the shelves. I have no idea why it was wrapped in plastic. But this series is only 4 volumes long, so not a huge commitment. I know this author also did Lost Lad London, which is another short mystery manga, so I might look into that one as well. But overall, I'm interested in continuing. The mystery is pretty good. And yeah, not one of my favorites from this bunch, but definitely one I'm going to continue. The next volume 1 I read was Dracula Volume 1. I don't really need to give a premise of this because it's just Dracula, except the characters are in boarding school, basically. So I'm just going to talk about it as an adaptation of the original novel, which I have read. It's really interesting to read this in a manga format because the original novel is an epistolary novel, which means it's told entirely in letters. I'm not sure whether that would make this story more difficult or easier to adapt, but so far I think the author has done very well with the adaptation. It is definitely a little bit different from the novel, but I never want to read an adaptation that is one for one just like the original source material, because then it's just boring. I would just go back and read the source material. For example, Junji Ito did an adaptation of Frankenstein, and he definitely changed the ending a lot, but I thought it was very interesting and entertaining, so I didn't mind it, even though it was definitely a change from the original novel. Especially with classic novels, I feel like you need to add something or change something or do something different in order to make your adaptation worth reading over all the other different adaptations out there. So far, the biggest omission that I have noticed is the entire part with Jonathan Harker at the beginning of the novel is not in here at all. So I don't think that they will ignore that, but I'll be interested to see how that plays into the story going on. This one so far focuses a lot more on Mina, and her circumstances are very different than in the novel, but I'm eager to see what goes on with her. Obviously, some changes have been made, but I would say that the tone and the themes of Dracula so far have definitely been kept in this manga. It is nice and creepy. The art is amazing. It is very atmospheric. The way that the author chooses to adapt Dracula's different powers is very interesting, and with his art style, just beautiful to look at on the page. So, as someone who is already a fan of Dracula, I really love this manga. So far, it's only one volume, but I already know I'm going to read the entire thing and enjoy it. And I'm going to pick up anything else by this author. I know Innocent is out now when I'm filming this. I have ordered it. It's not here yet, but I was going to save it for this video, but then I decided I'll just wait until my next one to talk about that. But definitely highly recommend this if any of that sounded interesting to you. The next volume 1 I read was Omnibus 1 of Cat-Eyed Boy. This is by Kazuo Umezu. I've read a couple of his works, namely The Drifting Classroom and Orochi, both of which were good, but not my favorite horror manga or anything, so I was lowering my expectations to read this one. This reminds me a lot of Orochi in that there are different stories that the Cat-Eyed Boy kind of follows. He follows these characters, but he is definitely more involved in these characters' lives than Orochi was. Orochi was an outsider for a lot of the stories. She was just observing and kind of telling the stories, but Cat-Eyed Boy is definitely involved with some of these characters. This one also explores a lot about yokai, which is different than the other Umezu works that I've read so far. So far I think I like this one more than Orochi, and probably more than The Drifting Classroom as well, but still not my favorite horror manga or anything. Kazuo Umezu would have to change a lot of things to become one of my favorite horror manga authors, but so far I'm enjoying this one, and I'm definitely looking forward to the second omnibus, which should complete the series. The next volume 1 I read was Dark Gathering Volume 1. This is about a boy who has the ability to see spirits, but he's really sick of seeing ghosts, so he's become a shut-in and he's trying to avoid all that until he becomes involved with this girl here, who can also see spirits and is basically an exorcist, kind of. She goes around dealing with supernatural cases and getting rid of the spirits that are haunting people. She is also trying to find the spirit that took her mother, so that part is interesting. Everything else in this volume did not impress me at all. This is when not looking into a manga before I read it kind of comes back to bite me, because I didn't know that this manga was about a child character who has supernatural powers, which normally I don't do great with. I don't tend to enjoy them very much. And at least in this first volume, I did not like that. This volume, and definitely the second volume, I've read 3 volumes, so I guess I'll talk about all of them, but the first 2 volumes are incredibly episodic, and the episodes were not interesting to me. The pacing was just too fast. They would meet this character and very quickly solve their problem, and it just didn't connect with me. And I'm not sure if it's the printing or the actual art, but the art is very dark. So sometimes you're trying to read it and it's hard to see what's happening because there are so many dark inks and I can't see the action and I can't follow it very well. So those are my thoughts for the first volume. If I hadn't already bought 3 volumes, I probably would have dropped it right after this one, but I did read the 3 volumes that I had, and luckily volume 3 got a lot better. They introduced a new character, which I think if they hadn't introduced that character, who is more of a happy-go-lucky kind of character, then I would not have continued on because I did not like it except for that character. So I will very slowly continue to read these volumes as they come out to decide if I'm going to keep reading because, like I said, the main mystery with the girl's mother is interesting, but I'm not sure how long it's going to take to address that, and if we're just playing Spirit Doctor, then I'm not interested. Although, I'm going to talk about my next series, which is also Spirit Doctor. But anyway, so if I'm just reading this first volume, it's definitely lower on the list, but because I did read the first 3 volumes, I ended up enjoying it more, but I'm just going to rank this one when I do my ranking at the end of the video. I think it's pretty easy to tell what books I read in what month based on the genres that I'm talking about, but my next series is Tokyo Babylon Volume 1. This is about a boy here named Subaru. He is 16 and he is basically a spirit doctor, like I mentioned earlier, more like a spirit detective. He goes around solving supernatural cases, helping people out. Maybe there's a spirit who is stuck in Tokyo and they want to leave but they don't know why, so they haunt people. That part so far is okay. This one, I would say the pacing is better than Dark Gathering because there are only a couple different cases that we're exploring in this volume, but I do really enjoy the themes in this manga so far. There's a lot of discussion of Tokyo as this kind of huge city where you can follow your dreams, but underneath that, it's very lonely and dark and cold and depressing. And if you couldn't tell from the title, there's also a comparison between Tokyo and the city of Babel. So I'm very interested to see where we're going to go with that, because there's lots of setup here so far, kind of a dark undertone of everything. I was also kind of wary because the main character here is 16, and for some reason, him and his twin sister hang out with this 25-year-old man who definitely says that he is in love with Subaru several times. So I was a little bit wary that it was going to become like an age gap romance thing, but at the end of the volume, there's definitely something sinister happening. So I'm not really worried at this point that the narrative is going to say that this relationship is okay. This is also my first Clamp work. I've never read a manga by Clamp before, and I kind of had some expectations going into this, but so far I'm impressed. I will be interested in reading more of this series for sure. It is a 7-volume long series. I think with this one, I will wait until it's entirely completed before I just read the entire thing. But I'm definitely intrigued. It's very mysterious, and I'd like to see more from this. The next volume one I read is Centaurs Volume 1, and this was my favorite one out of all 10 volumes that I read. So this is a fantasy adventure manga. It focuses on the centaurs. They are currently at war with humans. The humans basically capture them, cut off their arms, and use them for labor. So we're following this centaur who is trying not to become captured by them, and this other centaur in the back who has lived under the control of humans for a very long time and is looking to escape. This is a very, very high stakes fantasy action adventure manga. It's been a while since I read something that felt as high stakes as this does, and I really enjoy that. I really like when I read something and I feel connected to these characters and I don't want them to get hurt. I want them to live happy lives, and this one does that so far very well, even in just one volume. The world building is also very well done, even for just one volume. In this volume, like I said, we talk about the kind of class system or hierarchy going on here, and you see a lot of the family dynamics of the centaurs, and I found all that very interesting. And at the end, there's some supplemental material in an author's note as well, which explores more of the world. So I highly enjoyed this volume. Like I said, it was my favorite out of all of them. I think this is the only one I gave 5 stars. Dracula I gave 4.5 out of 5. But this one was definitely the one I'm most interested in continuing. There will only be 6 volumes in this series, so I am very much looking forward to more. This is one I will also probably just wait until all of the volumes are out, because it is so high stakes. I don't want to read a volume every 3 months and wait, because then I feel like I might lose that emotional connection to it. So I will just go ahead and wait until everything's out and read the entire thing. The next volume one I read was The Essence of Being a Muse. This is about a 23-year-old woman who has recently failed to get into art school. She now feels like she's wasting her life. This is not helped by the fact that she has a really rocky relationship with her mother, who is kind of projecting her own insecurities and desires onto her daughter. So because of all this, this character has really lost all of her self-confidence and her self-esteem. She really feels awful for herself. And unfortunately, I really struggle to read characters like that, where they're just constantly putting themselves down. They lack any type of confidence. And I know for this manga, that's the point. And I get that. I just really struggle with reading about those characters. On the plus side, I can already see, even in this first volume, a little bit of the main character's character development shining through. So I'm not worried that this character is going to stay like this the entire time. I am interested in reading more about her trying to kind of take back her desire to get back into art school, take back her ability to make art, and be confident about the art she is making. So I'm interested in reading more. Unfortunately, I had one more problem with this volume. The final chapter is focusing not on the main character, but on one of her love interests, basically, and he is really unlikable. And normally I don't mind reading unlikable characters, but in this chapter, we kind of go through some of his sad backstory, and because he is so rude and insensitive, I really struggled to connect with his story and be sympathetic for him. And because that did take up so much of this volume, I unfortunately didn't love this volume. But I do think I will read one more volume to see if I'm going to continue the series, but so far it was okay. And this final volume I wasn't even going to include in this video because it's a spin-off of a manga I've already talked about before, and a very well-loved one at that. But to make it an even 10 volumes, the next volume I read was Witch Hat Atelier Kitchen. So this is obviously a spin-off of Witch Hat Atelier. It basically just follows the characters in their quiet times, basically as they're making food for each other. As with many slice of life cooking manga, the cooking part could not care less about that. I don't care about the cooking parts. I'm not going to make these recipes, really. This one was a little bit more interesting because the recipes they use and the ingredients are not usually real life ingredients. They're fantastical, different things that are in this world. So that's interesting enough, but the reason I did really enjoy this volume is because it is a slice of life series. It is kind of a nice breather from the angst and drama that's happening in the main series. It's kind of like when you read a really dramatic, dark series and then you go and read all of the fluffy fan fiction about it to kind of cleanse your palate. That's what this is. It's a nice break from the emotional devastation that's happening in the regular series. So I definitely enjoyed this. There's no question I'm going to continue reading, and I'm looking forward to more. So after all that, I realized that I forgot to rank them in the video. So this is my current ranking for the series I'm most likely to continue reading to the ones I'm least likely to continue reading. Obviously, up top, we have my two favorites with Centaurs and Dracula. Tokyo Babylon, the more I think about it, the more I want to continue reading it, so that's why that's there. And then Witch Hat Kitchen shouldn't even be in this ranking because it's obvious, and then some ones that I'm interested in continuing, but not really, like, super needing the next volume right away. Then The Essence of Being a Muse, I'm very much on the fence with. Dirt Gathering, if I was just ranking the first volume, that's where it would be. Because I have read 3 volumes, I'd probably put it like right in between The Essence of Being a Muse and Cat-Eyed Boy, just because I am continuing it. But again, if I did only have the first volume, I probably would have decided to drop it. And then Touge Oni is the only one in this video that I am definitely planning on dropping. I'm not going to continue it. So yeah, overall pretty successful. I think the next time I'll do one of these in January, and this time I'll just save all of the volumes to read in the month instead of reading them as they come out and then talking about them like 2 months later. I'll just wait until January and read all the ones that I have by then. But that was everything I wanted to talk about in this video. If you've read any of these, please let me know your thoughts down below. If you agreed with me, if you disagreed with me, or let me know what new series you've recently tried and enjoyed. But that's gonna be it for this video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye!